my mom would be like, your kids are outside. And you're just like, what do you mean? She's like, they're outside the window. Can you just go and get them? To the point where, my mom would be walking down the street on the high street, would go shopping, and the kids would see her and get her stuff and bring it home. Because it's not just about what you're doing on the basketball court or what you're doing at football. They really see themselves as part of your life because you're that role model that they're used to. Sometimes they probably see you more than they see their parents or their family. So sports really is that thing that brings people together. Behind the camera and becoming an editor in a very male-dominated space. And there wasn't many diversity, like none. So for me, it was hard. But also something being hard doesn't mean it's undoable, So it gives you the opportunity to challenge the status quo. Why is there no women in this room?
And welcome again to another episode of the BAL NBA Athlete podcast. My name is Coach David. And guys, I know you guys have had a great year so far. We've had a great year so far. And the reason why is because of the amazing guests that we have on the podcast. And today, like I always say, all our guests are amazing. And this one is very special because I've been wanting to have this conversation for maybe about 2 years now. And lo and behold, she's here. I would like to introduce you all to Benny Bonsu. I don't know if it's Miss or Mrs. So I don't want to say Miss or Mrs. I'm trying to be as polite as possible.
Benny Bonsu is fine.
Okay. Bonsu is fine. Okay, so today we have Benny Bonsu, who is a distinguished sports media executive. Normally online, people will say she's Ghanaian, British, but I'm saying that she's a universal sports media executive, the first sports editor for Give Me and has been a pinnacle and a visionary behind women's sports globally, but also sports in Africa as well, which I found out from so many other people who have been telling me stories about you. So, Benny, welcome to this podcast. I'm grateful and I'm honored to have you on here as a guest.
Thank you for having me. Sorry it's taken 2 years to get me on here.
That's okay. Like I said, I didn't want to share so much, but there's so much I could have kind of shared on that intro. What you've done for the Paris Olympics with your team as well, the one that happened last year, what you're currently doing at UNESCO, and so many other things that a lot of people actually don't know that you are a pioneer when it comes to sports globally, but you're almost kind of like behind the scenes. We don't get to see you much, but we get to see your work, basically. So my first question is always going to go back to history. Growing up, having obviously family, obviously I know you have brothers around you as well. What was that like, and how has that kind of like influenced what you currently do today as well?
I've had, many people will say I've had several lives. And sometimes when I sit down and think about it, I'm like, oh my God, I've lived for such a long time. I've done so many different things. But for me, growing up in Ghana, I was born and raised in Ghana. Then in my early years came into the UK, grew up in Tottenham, where, I was fortunate to be integrated in sports very early. I started doing sports at 11. And I had a great coach. His name is Bert Gravis. I always have to give him the props, So if anybody ever stands anywhere and say, they're the ones that got me into sports, they're lying. It was Bert Gravis, who is the CEO of Haringey Sports Development. If you're a young person that grew up in Tottenham, you've most likely come across Bert Gravis. That's where I started. And I loved sports. And luckily for me, I went to a secondary school that also sports was in our DNA. You do maths, English, science, you go to RE, and then you do sports. You join a sports team. And I loved it. For me, I did it all throughout high school, sixth form, even at university, picked up jiu-jitsu at university. So I did martial arts at university. But within that whole journey, I always went back home to Tottenham. I qualified as a coach in football. I qualified as a coach in basketball and in athletics. So I went back to support Burke to coach the young people working with the Haringey Youth Service. And I realized that sport is always going to be part of my life. But I also loved teaching. So I went on to become a teacher. I worked in secondary schools. In fact, I worked with a lot of the bad breed in Tottenham, all the top bad boys and girls in Tottenham. I used to work with them. And I also enjoyed that very much. And I always said, if I'm going to do something, I'm always going to do it to the top level before I leave it. I always knew I was going to go into sports because behind the background, even from the age of 12 years old, I was in Parliament. I was at BBC arguing with, MPs about the fact that they don't have better infrastructure for us to engage in sports. And I always knew I was going to go into policy. I'm going to do something in sports. I didn't know what at that point. So I went on in teaching for many years. Then I finally qualified. I qualified for my headship. In 2016, 2017. With doing all of that, I'd be in school 8:30 to 5:30, and then at 6:30, I'm on radio or I'm on TV with the BBC. So the kids had two versions of Miss Bonsu, Miss Bonsu, who's head of pastoral and behavior during the day, who's very strict. And after school, she would do sports with us. And then in the evening, she's doing the news on BBC. This is crazy for them. But they also enjoyed it because they could see that the opportunity is there, especially as a woman of color in the UK. As you said, I became the first female sports editor in 2018 in the UK. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Because it sounds like it was yesterday. But those young people could see that, and they were around me and they could see the struggle. I'm working during the day, and in the evening, I'm working till low hours and then coming back to work the following day. But I did that. I did that for many years. And then when I qualified with my headship, as soon as I qualified, I also had a major operation because, I suffer from fibroids, a major operation during that time. And it was at that time, I said, if I don't make that decision now, I would never make it to jump from education. And by that time, as she said, I've always been in the background, helping with the buildup of NBA Africa, helping with the growth of NFL Africa. If it's to do with athletics, I'm most probably involved. I've been involved in the Premier League since the age of 14 years old, working and designing programs for Arsenal and Tottenham. So I was always doing something. Didn't always talk about it, but I was in the background. And if you were into community work and young people and their development, you would know that Benny Bonsu is behind that. Benny and Benson for sure designed that program. So in 2018, I did the jump after the operation. And I said, I'm going to do it. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to go for it. And that's when I became the first female sports editor in the UK for Give Me Sports. So that's where the history, the background is to where I am now. People see me and it's like, well, how did she do it? Like, did she just get to the Olympics? No, I've been doing this since I was 11 years old. And people out there from Tottenham that are in sports, within youth work, will always know that Benny Bonsu, yeah. If it's to do with sports, she's definitely involved,
That's quite interesting because last year we actually had a meeting with Tottenham Hotspur's Foundation just because they saw what we did in basketball, and it's still quite limited in the North London area right now to have those community organizations to actually work with the young people there. And then I went to talk about the podcasting side of things with Football Beyond Borders last year, and the amount of young kids from North London that were there that play basketball but don't have any facilities to play. I was like, oh wow, so this is actually an issue there. So, and a lot of these guys don't play football. When you love basketball, you love basketball. So it's interesting that you mentioned that you were doing work there, and I'm sure your impact is still felt in that area as well. So my next question, based on what I've said and what your response was, is what did it take you to even kind of stay in it as well throughout that period, even till now as well? Because it's easy to kind of sometimes there's times when we have sessions and I might feel ill and I don't want to go to it. But I know that there's 50 young guys waiting for me at 5 p.m. to play basketball. So I have to drag myself there. And over time, that consistency kind of gave me I felt more in love with the work and more in love with helping people as well. So what was it for you that kind of kept you in the whole process, basically?
I mean, for me, sports in North London is family. And when I first came into the UK, my mom worked 2 jobs, and she was never home. So for us, the other family we had was our sports family, so we would always be together. So when we leave home at 8:15 to go to school and we're not back home till 8:30, we're definitely with our classroom mates at sports, and then all of us walking home to get home when mom was getting home. And then for me, from that young age and growing up with these, my friends, it's always been a part of us. But then when I went to the other side, where I started teaching, when I became a youth worker, you realize that a lot of the young people just need good role models, and you become an example for them. I always say this everywhere I go, whether I'm on stage at UNESCO or UN or wherever I am. I always say this: people don't understand. Everything I have is through sports. It's through sports and education. It's nothing else. It's not somebody held my hand and opened the door for me. It was none of that. Everything I have is sports. And that's, for me, back then, that's why it was so important. I would be at my house the days where I didn't feel well. The kids knew where I lived. So they would come, they would knock the door and be like, "Benny, we're waiting for you. Let's go to Daquette's, at Temple Lane." And you're like, "Man, I don't feel well." They're like, yeah, come, let's go. We'll carry the balls. You could just walk. So it's like you never had a chance to say, "I don't feel well, I don't feel good," because those young people are looking up to you. Even on your worst day and you go to practice session, if you don't feel like it, they're going to make you feel like it, because they want to be there, and they want to be there because you're there. And that's what kept me going for many, many years. And what was good about it as well is that the young people I worked with, I won't mention the name of the school, but I worked in a school where the head teacher gave me a list of young people. It was like a list of 40 young people. A majority of them were boys, black boys, and a few Irish traveler kids. And he said, "Well, they're not going to do their GCSE, do something with them." And I remember calling all those kids into my room. And they were like, "Ms. Bonsu, we haven't done nothing." And I said, "I know you ain't done nothing, but you guys are here because I'm being told you guys can't achieve your GCSEs. So I need all of you to work with me to prove everybody else wrong." All those young boys went on to go to university. Some of them are big stars right now, music producers. Some of them are on TV shows. Some of them are finance people, and those young people went on to do great things. But when they did go, they also came back to help me support, mentor the next generation. So it's almost kind of like it's a responsibility. The biggest decision I've ever taken is moving away from Tottenham and living in a different country, because it's so hard. And I'm sure when you went to Tottenham to talk to them, it's very much like a family. It's very much like a family, and you can't leave those young people behind. And even now that I'm in Madrid, I'm always talking to people in Tottenham. What are we doing this summer? What are we doing for half term? Because it is important that those young people see people like me, like you, coming back to help rebuild our community for it to be what it is, which is essentially a huge family.
And it is a family as well. And for me, the reason why I've always kind of seen it in that way is because I come from a larger community as well, where it is like family, and my family also part of that community also. And one of our main focuses is helping people, but then helping people in what you're good at as well. So I didn't know that me getting into sports, I was in fashion before. So I was a stylist, and I used to do bespoke tailoring as well. My mom and dad are both designers from Nigeria. So we all kind of, apart from one of my sisters, we all kind of took that route, and didn't realize that sports was for me until when I decided, let me just organize a scrimmage indoors, take a few guys and bring my guys, let's just compete. And then that became 25 people on the first day. And then every week, 30, 35, 40, to a point where we had 110. And And in London, the courts they're very limited. A lot of places only have one court. So so I remember that day. It was really nice. Everyone stayed to the end, funny enough. We had food, we had DJ. There was 110 people there. The floor became very slippery because of the amount of people that were in there. It was crazy, but it was quite fun. But it's become a family over time as well, with a lot of the guys that we work with, to the point that at one point, it was just me kind of like pushing it myself, because a lot of my team started to do their own thing. So it was me, so I could be at sessions, doing a live stream, but also taking pictures at the same time. But then it was a blessing, because a lot of these young guys, they see the work that you put in. So now they come to you to want to learn what you do. And then now they're saying, okay, cool, you're not by yourself anymore. Let me do this, etc. And then it becomes more of beyond just a community, and people just want to get involved and build what benefits other people as well. So that's always been a message, using sports as that tool to send that message, is let's all support each other and push each other to the highest possible limit we can. So thank you for sharing that.
No, honestly, the kids my mom would be like, your kids are outside. And you're just like, what do you mean? She's like, they're outside the window. Can you just go and get them? To the point where, my mom would be walking down the street on the high street, we'll go shopping, and the kids would see her and get her stuff and bring it home. Because it's not just about what you're doing on the basketball court or what you're doing at football. They really see themselves as part of your life, because you're that role model that they're used to. Sometimes they probably see you more than they see their parents or their family. So sports really is that thing that brings people together, especially in an area like Tottenham. We love sports. We love community, and there's nothing more special than having young people that you grew up with that actually also respect the fact that you have struggled to make their life better.
Thank you very much for that. I really want to go into the whole detailed aspect of what it means to be beyond the athlete. And for me, I want to start off with you becoming the UK's first female sports editor at Give Me Sport. I know that was not easy. Even when you said 2018, I was thinking that's even like, why didn't that happen earlier, basically? So for me, it's really about like, what sort of challenges did you face? How did you even navigate them successfully also? And obviously all that leading up to enhancing women's sports as well.
Man, it was a tough period. I always talk about this when we talk about being a woman in a male-dominated environment, especially in the UK. It's not easy. Things are going better. When I was growing up, the only two women of color I saw on TV was Kelly Holmes and Denise Lewis. And then there was me, or doing MBA. And the people that actually gave me my first opportunity to do MBA was BBC on BBC Radio, and then BT Sports, and then onto Sky Sports. But then to be on the other side, behind the camera and becoming an editor in a very male-dominated space. And there wasn't many diversity, like none. So for me, it was hard. But also something being hard doesn't mean it's undoable, So it gives you the opportunity to challenge the status quo. Why is there no women in this room? Why am I one of the only women editors in the UK in the room talking about sports, when I know for a fact there was more of me out there in the streets? So for me, I'm not going to lie, I struggled in my first year. Even trying to get the funding to do the work was a struggle. Trying to justify why we need to pay to cover women's sports was a struggle, to the point where I used to go and meet all these agencies, all these brands, trying to tell them why this is important, that this is not charity, that this is a business investment. You need to pay attention. It's not a joke. It's not a gimmick. This is happening whether you like it or not. And it being a struggle to get them to understand. And luckily for me, the Women's World Cup in France was just around the corner. So then we had to use that to really amplify the message. And luckily, when we launched, we made a lot of noise, because one of the first decisions I made was intentional. I am going to recruit women from all walks of life, all different diverse women that have interesting stories to tell about football, basketball, cricket, swimming, athletics, everything. And we did. And these women were the most fiercest, feisty women you can find. You know, they argue with the men in the office and you're just like, wow, this is my tribe of women. And these women came just before the Women's World Cup. And we went to the Mirror newspaper group and we told them what we wanted to do. And they said, at that time, we don't have the budget to cover women's sports. But what we can do is we can partner. We can highlight some of the stories you're doing in the Mirror newspaper. And then we will also amplify them on Give Me Sports. It's never been done before. Normally, different platforms don't come together, and they did, which was amazing. So we covered the Women's Netball World Cup. Then we did the Women's Football World Cup. Then you saw Sky Sports, then BBC, and all these other platforms started announcing their all-female pundit, panel. They were doing this, and you're just like, you people were not doing this before. But okay, I'm happy to start it. Don't give me credit. I could care less. But, if you're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's make sure the newsroom is diverse. And let's make sure we're telling the right stories. Let's make sure that the men respect the work that we are doing as women in the space, because we've been doing this for years. This is not new. They're just arriving to the party. We're now, 2025 now. Women's sports is everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. Every brand wants to tell us how much they're doing for women's sports. In 2018, they were not doing it. They were not doing it.
It's quite interesting because women's sports has always been huge, but I think a lot of people didn't really see the potential because they kept comparing it to men's sports. So I always talk from my basketball side. I'm still learning all the other sports, but my other favorite sports are like Formula One, football, tennis, and American football as well. But I'm still kind of learning. So permit me to speak in the basketball terms, because that's why I'm an expert at. So even on the side of when you look at even basketball, they're looking at women, comparing them to the male basketball side, saying, "Oh, women can't dunk." So now you're seeing a lot of women dunking. So then, what else do you want? Oh, they're not good shooters, but then you now see someone like a Caitlin Clark, Sabrina Ionescu, and maybe so many others in Europe as well. So what else do you need now? But one thing that's really inspired me, and this is something that I'm always doing as well, I'm constantly creating, not waiting for anyone to say this is good, this is bad, it's not right time, it's too early, just constantly creating. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we keep moving, we keep creating. And one thing I've seen, especially within women's sports, is that constant creation has been happening as well. When you look at the WNBA now, and then you see the new league Unrivaled, and then you see all this other football leagues popping up here and there as well, you're seeing people thinking that, okay, I can actually just create my own world for a sport, whether it's male, whether it's female, and I think it's the best time for it as well. And I think that's one of the things that's really added to the rise and the continuous rise of female sports as well. I even went to one of the I went I went to an event to talk about Basketball Nation and the other venture I have, which is a sports association which covers multiple sports. So the idea for that, actually, the multiple sports, is to really kind of create communities within different sports, but also get to the level of what you mentioned earlier on, like being able to go into policies about that, which is my role, whilst the organizations kind of really push the sports and push young athletes through a pathway to becoming pros or beyond just being athletes as well. So that's what we do there. And I remember going to an event with Hammersmith and Fulham, because I'm from West London, and a lot of the schools have contacted us because a lot of their girls want to play basketball. So I'm like, oh wow, that's quite interesting, because a lot of them didn't come and speak to us that day because they were shy. But when we got the emails, it's all girls. So this is something that's quite huge. And for us, it's quite nice to know the fact that they want us to be able to do that for them as well. So yeah, I think this year is going to take off for women's sports, and I still want more boundaries to come so that they can excel. Women's sports can excel a bit more. I like the pressure. I like barriers and like obstacles to come in place. So let's see what happens as well, and let's see how sports takes off this year.
I mean, it's so sad when I see men pundits sit on TV and talk about women's basketball and why it is not interesting and what we need to do to make it interesting for them. And we need to wear shorter shorts and we need to... Listen, let me tell you something. Women's basketball has always been popular. We've had some of the biggest names in the WNBA for as long as we could remember. As I said, women's sports didn't start yesterday. You men just arrived. You've just arrived to the party. You know, and we talk about sports and we talk about sports investment and we talk about, you know, with the fact that, you know, women's sports is not, you know, it's not very big. You know what? If you invested as much money as you invest in men's sports and women's sports, do you think women's sports will still be unpopular? No. Look at the money that's been invested in women's sports now. It's not as much as the men, and it's still overtaking some of the sports that we have now. Now, it's getting more investments. It's getting a lot more eyeballs. When I left the UK in 2020, overall coverage of women's sports across all platforms, TV, radio, newspapers were just under 7%. And it was still being talked about. So imagine if every platform decided that they were going to treat women's sports just like they treat men's sports, would we be having this conversation? We won't be having this conversation because it would be very, very, very big. And it is going to be very, very big. And if you know, last year, the year before, has been years where the records have been broken for each women's sports. Football, the record numbers of crowds going. Basketball, record numbers going. Rugby, record numbers going. We keep on breaking the records because now we have men allies. We have men that love women's sports that want to go. The women at home that manage the money that comes home are the ones that are paying for those sports events, the sports gear. Come on, man. If you're a man and you're sitting there watching sport and you're still saying, oh, women can't dunk, it makes you uneducated as to what is happening now in 2025, and you need to get with the times. It's either you get on board or you get left behind. And that's exactly where women's sports is going forward, and it's going to keep growing.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I just wanted to add that anything that women put their hands to, it will always become successful. Any family, community, women always have almost like a silent strength, but very impactful strength in that. Even when you look at politics as well, when you look at great leaders, they always have a woman behind them. If it's a male leader, of course, they always have a strong woman behind them. Listen, even for me now, just being able to do this, if my wife wasn't as the person she was, I wouldn't even have the guts to even contact certain people like yourself. Honestly, like I would think, why am I contacting them for? They're not going to respond back to me, but she will always push me to take that leap all the time. So, women are powerful, honestly. And a lot of people, I think a lot of men know that and they try to dumb it down, but no, if it benefits the world, honestly. So yeah, but I wanted to go into some of what you've done as well, especially within your roles. One of the ones I wanted to touch on was your leadership role at IOC. And which is obviously around sort of like daily content, director of daily content for the Olympic Channel. How basically, what did you implement? Because I read that what you did with especially the Paris Olympics last year was quite amazing in terms of the narrative that yourself and your team really shared with the world. How did you? Let me rephrase my question. How did you come up with the strategies that you implemented to make that reality basically and still be successful as well? Because I feel like sometimes it could have been like, sometimes maybe someone might say, oh, they were in the shower and this idea came to them, or oh, they were having a conversation with someone and like, oh, this sort of came to them. So what was that like for you?
I mean, for us, for the Olympics, the Olympics.com platform was established in 2016. And the idea of that was to give the athletes a voice, a platform. Olympics.com looks after all athletes and all sports, all Olympic sports. And for us, it was really important especially for each games, not just the Paris Games, winter sports, summer and winter youth sports. that we are strategic in the stories we tell, but also we tell the real stories. We don't want to be a platform where you tell a story just to be famous for 5 seconds, but we want to tell the true stories of those athletes that are training for 4 years. Some people are training for 8. Some people are training their whole lives just to go and compete at the Olympics. And those stories are incredible. And we have an incredible responsibility to tell these wonderful stories of these amazing athletes. And it's not just about athletes that win, it's about all athletes from all walks of lives. And ahead of each games, we really do a lot of work in the background, analyzing our markets, looking at the different parts of the world. What content are they consuming? Video, podcast, editorial content, SEO content. What is it that they want? What interests them the most? And not everybody wants to come and read about sports, but they want to know about music. They want to know about fashion. They want to know about well-being. They want to know how Usain Bolt runs under 10 seconds. What does he do? We've got to find a different point of entry of interest, So for somebody like me who loves basketball anyway, but if I find an athlete that also likes fashion, that's also into basketball, I want to read more about that person. So we do all this research behind the scenes and get the numbers, statistics on what's the US doing? How many people are tuned in at this hour of the day? How many people tuned in, on a Saturday, on a Sunday? And having all that information behind, we then sit down. As part of my job as director of daily content is put a strategic plan together. What is it that we want to achieve in Paris? What is the story that we have, we want to tell in Paris? And don't forget, we're not just telling the athlete stories, but we're also telling the community stories. Who are the people behind the people that are making it to the podium? But also the country where we're doing the sport. What is it about France that we love? What do the people of France want the world to know about them? So we do all of that research, then we sit down and we literally plan every single day, every single minute, every single hour, what is going out. That's on the editorial side. And then we do that with the podcast. What stories do you want to tell every day during Paris? What events are happening? Who do we want to interview? We plan all of that out. Plus, then you're looking at also our original series. And, our original series over the last 2-3 years, we're doing partnerships with Netflix, Amazon. So you've seen the Redeem Team that was on Netflix. You've seen Simone Rising. You've seen the athletics one that we just had. The name has just gone out of my head. But we have all these original series that, sorry, say that again?
Sprint.
There you go, Sprint. And we have others the next couple of months as well. So we have those original series that we want to put out there as well. We have the first games coming up in Dakar 2026. So we did a series on African athletes hoping to go to the Olympics, focused solely on African athletes. So we plan all of those out for games time. Don't forget, Olympics.com doesn't only work during games time. We work all year round. So all year round, we're covering over 160 events all year round. So we have teams around the world telling those stories, telling those incredible stories, so that we're making sure that the reason why you love the Olympics, I love the Olympics, the kid in the remote village in Africa loved the Olympics, is the incredible stories that come across. And all of that comes together with us strategically planning, understanding our markets, understanding the stories people want to read, want to watch, and why they want to watch it, and making sure we're continuously studying and reviewing what we're doing so we keep in line and afresh with what is happening in the world. So the work of daily content is not easy. And don't forget, we're doing all of this in 12 different languages. It's not just English. We're doing it in 12 different languages on our platform, which is a huge, huge machine. So it's not easy at all. I don't sleep easy at night. I don't have many days off. And we are always traveling because to get those stories, you need to go to where the story is. You can't sit in the office and make it up. You need to be in those communities and be part of those communities.
Wow, like you even answered one of my questions, because my next question was going to be, how long do you sleep for? Well, you just answered it already anyway. But that's quite inspiring and interesting to know, because a lot of people never really know what it takes behind the scenes to create all that content, everything that we're watching and consuming, especially during the Olympics or even before, like even the Netflix shows. I didn't know that was all kind of part of the whole strategy as well, which is quite interesting. And one thing that you did say is that you have to go to the places where those stories are and get those stories. Is even just now kind of inspired me that, okay, maybe I need to even start even doing that for my platform as well, where it's nice to create certain stories online, but I actually want to go into doing things like animations now for young people to watch around sports. So for me to do that, I need to also speak to people. I may not be able to speak to them online, so maybe I need to actually physically meet people as well. So that was quite interesting for me anyway, to take in. But in terms of, obviously now doing that at IOC, but then you're also still working within sort of, and being a board member and ambassador for different initiatives. How do you balance everything? Because even I was watching an interview with my wife the other day with you speaking. I think it was a UNESCO video on YouTube, and we were thinking, how do you balance everything? Like, because you actually do so much, but you're not sort of doing it half-heartedly. You're really putting your all into it, and it's impacting a lot of people. So how do you balance everything as well? Because there are some people who are, the only people that can do that, first of all, are creatives, which I believe you are. So for all the other creatives out there, how do you balance everything, and what would you advise to other creatives, journalists, etc., that have so many ideas and want to create so many things for people and for the world, and be able to do the same as well?
No, David, it always makes me laugh when people say, they come to me and say, well, we saw you doing this and you've done this and you're doing that. And I'm like, I wish I had the time to do all these things you think I'm doing. The reality is I'm in my house, I go to work, and then I have things that I'm committed to. And the things I'm committed to is important as much as my work is. And for me, the only reason why I have the energy and the passion to keep on doing my job to a high standard is because of the initiatives I'm also involved in when I'm not working. Because you need to have the balance. You can't be all work and do nothing else. What I do when I'm not working inspires me when I'm back in the office. Like the work I do with UNESCO on gender equality and understanding what women and girls go through when it comes to sports, abuse, domestic violence, engaging. Why do young girls at the age of 13 decide to stop doing sports? I want to understand that. So when I'm back in the office and we want to write a story about women in sports or girls in sports and engaging in sports, I understand the reasons why those girls are dropping out and coming up with real ideas of how we can make things better for those girls. I was on the board for Basketball England for many, many years. Why? Because I'm passionate about basketball, because I started off as a coach, in Grassroots. And I know the challenges young people are facing in the community, not having access to facilities, not having access to go play because they just can't afford to pay the fees to go and play. To have a voice on the board for those young people, so the people that make the decision understand that when they decide that they're not going to give us funding for basketball, that they're actually impacting 2.5 million young people in London that actually love the sport of basketball, that if they really invested, look at what could happen. Because you have all these kids that have come out of the programs that are in America, that are playing in the NBA, that are playing in the EuroLeague. Imagine what you could do. So for me, I feel like I need that balance. I don't, and it is boring, because I think at times people think I live this exciting life. They'll see me on one premiere, they're like, oh my God, she goes everywhere. I don't. I go to work and I'm home. And if I'm not home, I'm doing something with my board or my foundation. And if I'm not doing that, I am most definitely sleeping. My friends will tell you, Benny, if doesn't have to do a meeting after work, she's in bed by 8:30. I'm in bed at 8:30. Because I know I'll be up at 5:30 in the morning. I'll do my gym. I'll do all my foundation stuff. Then I'm start my own work for the Olympics. I'm at my computer by 8:30. These are really important to me. But also, the bigger picture is I have a mission, and the mission is to learn as much as possible. I'm African. I want to see Africa flourish when it comes to sports. I want Africa to be a destination where people look at us and be proud to be from the continent, know that sports is organized to the most professional standard ever. And to do that, I need to learn as much as possible. So being able to have the opportunity to work with the Olympics and learning from some of the best brains around the world is amazing for me. And then to be on the board for Basketball England or Africa Health Now, or for the Global First Ladies Alliance, or being ambassador for UNESCO is best of both worlds, where you're learning from incredible people. So when I'm back home in Ghana or Nigeria or Rwanda, or wherever in Africa I'm at, and somebody's asking me, Benny, how does this work? I share what I know, or I connect them with the person I've met, so that they can also learn. So for me, yes, it's a lot. Like I do a lot. Sometimes, like I told you at the beginning of the conversation, that I've lived so many lives. So sometimes when somebody says, man, do you remember when you did this? And Benson, when my brother, that very well, when he passed away, we used to sit there and goes, Benny, do you remember when we first started NBA Africa? And we would laugh because we're just like, oh my God, it feels like a whole different lifetime. And it really is because I've done so many things over the time. And for me, it is an opportunity. It is a pleasure to be able to do it, but also it's a purpose. I'm here for a reason. And this is my reason, is to do something amazing with sports and change people's lives. So I really, honestly, David, I manage my time so well. I don't waste a minute of my time because I know that I need to learn this and then I need to give back, because I'm not here by mistake. I'm here because somebody gave me the opportunity, which was Berg Gravis when I was 11 years old, and taught me what sports can give me. Now I have to do the same for other people, but also being the Olympics, the athletes. I'm a woman of color who's in charge of content. So when those athletes see me, they go, ooh, I trust Benny, because I know she's going to do the right thing. She's going to tell the right story. She's not going to be excited and do some headline that's going to make somebody famous. I trust her to tell my story. So I take that responsibility very seriously. So no, I don't live this glamorous life where I'm everywhere. I'm not. Like, honestly, I go to one party a year. literally. Other than that, I'm at home focused on what I'm doing.
At least you go to parties. Me, I don't leave the house if it's nothing to do with what I do, basically, like, or maybe seeing a friend or dinner.
But David, when we talk about parties, it's not parties. I mean, I will meet you at 6 o'clock for dinner. By 8 o'clock, I'm home. That's it. There's no excitement in that one.
That's amazing. Oh, God. It's so funny that you mentioned about the basketball side of things, about the money side. So when we actually started, we've never charged for our sessions for the last almost 3 years now. And to be honest, when we started it, we had not a lot of money. We used to do cardboard sales. I used to go to people's houses and get all the stuff they didn't want, sell it at cardboard sales, raise funds every week. There might be some weeks where we miss it, but okay, cool. We go to the next one. And then now it's like we're starting to get the funding, but then also the local council like Hammersmith and Fulham, they support that as well. So these guys that come to our sessions never ever pay. I've always had this thing, I never want to take money from anyone that's a 16-year-old plus. And basically, even the older lot, like for me, basketball should almost be like going to church. You're not paying to enter the building. You're coming to do something that you love, basically. And it's always been like that. But then we also create other opportunities around that as well. And this year is going to be amazing. So for me, I want to hear about what this year is going to look like for you, what your plans are, what we expected to see, even though you're still kind of keeping yourself behind the scenes, but now a lot of people will know you a bit more.
I'm still going to be behind the scenes. It is always interesting when people think they see me all the time. I'm like, nah, you didn't. Like, you didn't. I'm at home. But this year for me, we've got Milano Cortina, which is the Winter Olympics that's happening in Italy next year. So we're preparing for that. That's next year, starts kicking off on February 6th. So we're very busy covering qualifying events, test events, attending all those winter coverage, making sure we're raising the awareness of it globally. Also, next year we have Dakar 2026, which is the first Olympic, Youth Olympic Games summer in the continent of Africa, which is huge for us Africans, because nothing has ever happened, nothing like this ever happened. So we're also focused on making sure we're telling that right story of Africa and really showing the world that Africa is not what they think it is. We've moved on. This is where we're at. This is where we're going. So we're doing a lot of work on that at the moment. And then on a personal front, on the background, with my foundation, St. Benedict's Foundation, one of the things that we lack in Ghana and across Africa is the lack to access of safe spaces and facilities for young people to engage in sports. So currently working with schools in the Kumasi region, hoping to build some basketball courts and some football pitches for young girls and boys to be able to access sports for free. So currently working, raising funds to ensure that we can build that for those young people and give them access to sports, working in partnership with the Otumfuo Education Foundation in Kumasi. So that's what I'm focused on. And of course, my work with UNESCO continuously raising the profile of gender equality and the importance of it, especially in this climate, climate we're in the world where things seems to be going backwards, to make sure we're still having those conversations of why women and girls matter in conversations and why it needs to get to the point where we shouldn't have to ask for it. You should know that if you're in a room full of men and they're not women, you should ask questions. So I will continue to do that. And then obviously my work with the Global First Ladies Alliance and supporting the charity work they do around the world. But as always, David, I'll be in the background, just making sure things are moving.
Amazing. And do let us know how we can also be a part of any of your projects, initiatives, through support, through anything that we can do. We're always open to working when it comes to everything to do with sports, especially grassroots. But yeah, just let us know if anything that we can do to support with all your work. I'm not going to keep you too long. I just have 2 more questions or 3 more questions, very quick, snappy questions. Okay. Yeah. Do you have a question for me?
Somebody that loves basketball and obviously comes from a basketball family, it is always interesting for me to learn about people when they first fell in love with basketball and what keeps you in love with basketball to this day, especially in the UK.
Okay, so I was born in Nigeria, came here when I was 12. I'm 37 now, so it's a very long time. And my first encounter with basketball was through my cousin, and he actually made, both of us actually made a hoop. So we had a plank of wood, like a square one, wasn't even, got a welder to bend one of those kind of like ribbed rods that you see in Nigeria that they use for scaffold, in Africa they use for scaffolding, bent it and then nailed it to the backboard. And we had a football at the time, but the football wasn't big enough. So what we did is that we added rubber bands, to make it a bit bigger. I don't know why we didn't have I don't know why we didn't have a basketball. Come to think of it now, but that's what that was my first experience with basketball, because at the time we were still young. Like, he was, how old? 14. I was 12. How old is he? I was about maybe like 6, 7, and he was like 2 years older than me. But we were on the verge of like preparing to come to the UK around that time, basically. So we were still in school. But that was my first experience with basketball, really. And then started playing in school in Nigeria. He was really good in Lagos, as one of like the best point guards there. But I was horrible. And then coming to the UK, I did say to him that when I come to the UK, I'm going to be better than him, which I ended up being. I wasn't still like great, but I don't know, that love, I think the love for basketball continued from, if you were to go to anywhere in the world and you found a basketball court, you found your people, you found your community. So like when we used to go to Christmas, like Paris, or went to like Florida or Greece, like there's always a court there. Spain, there's a court there. When you meet people older or younger, you've almost kind of like connected with them straight away just because you play basketball. And then since then, I've just never knew that it would be a tool that I would use to really help people until maybe 3 years, June 2022, basically. And yeah, it's just been so fast from then. Like, we haven't. There's so much I would love to share with you with what we do and what we're about to do. And I know we didn't really get to speak about your brothers, and obviously one of your brother Pops playing in the NBA as well. But a lot of people do know that story. But I wanted to really focus today on just Benny. So that's my answer to that question. Basically, that's what keeps me around. The fact that I can still use it to help people is the main thing. So yeah.
You know what? It would be interesting for you to look at the BAL, the Basketball Africa League. You know, what they're doing across the continent. You know, Nigeria is a hub for it. Senegal is a hub. Ghana is the all-star hub for it. And hearing your story, you know, it comes from us sitting in New York office with Dem Silva and Amadou Galofa, Lowell Pops, and coming up with the concept of Basketball African and seeing how it's grown. And when I hear stories like this is the reason why basketball, you know, the BAL in Africa is important. Because if you have young people bending things to make a court just to be part of the culture, you know, basketball is a culture. And if you're part of the culture, it's part of your life. So with what you're doing, Basketball Nation, you should really tap into what is happening with the BAL, not just in Senegal, but in Morocco, in Egypt, in South Africa, in Ghana, and really trying to galvanize a lot more people to get involved in it.
Definitely, and I have been trying to reach out to quite a few people out there as well. I know there's a few UK athletes that have gone out there to try out for teams as well. But yeah, I would definitely maybe do a bit more push on that side, definitely. So next question is a basketball-related question. You may not like this, but you have to start, bench, and trade Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. Let's do it. So my plan with this is to actually, once I get to my 50th episode, I'm going to create a compilation of everyone's answer as one video. And I think that'll be quite interesting to put online. So, yeah.
Hold on. Kobe, MJ, LeBron.
And LeBron, yeah. I know, sorry.
Okay. Hold on. But look, you can't give me those names because these are all different eras of basketball, right?
Okay. All of them in their prime as well, because they can all play in each era. To be fair, yeah.
I'm always going to play Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Because I believe he's the GOAT. Yes, he's won everything, and everybody thinks LeBron is. But if we're going specifically on just what people have won and what people history, I go with Michael Jordan. I'm always going to play him. I am going to. Oh, damn. I don't want to trade Kobe because this is hard. Kobe, LeBron, and Michael. Damn. Can I play but two? I can't play two? No? No? I have to choose.
Trade and bench one.
I'm benching LeBron. I'm benching LeBron. Okay. I will play Michael. And I don't want to trade Kobe because Kobe's my guy. But because I don't have any other choice, I'll trade him.
Okay,
but Michael, good answer. For me, it's always
no answer is wrong. Anyway, when I asked Matt Rodriguez, the guy that runs Ball is Life, on the podcast, one of the early podcasts, he did say that he would trade. I think he said he would trade LeBron or Kobe, but he would get some really good pieces for the team based on that trade. So yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. It's based on opinion.
It's not a fair question, by the way.
It's not meant to be a fair question. So for myself, I'll put mine is LeBron starting, Kobe bench, trade MJ. That's me. That's just me. So yeah.
How can you trade MJ in his prime?
I've got Kobe. Kobe is my favorite player. So, and I just like the way LeBron plays. Sorry?
LeBron.
Kobe is my favorite player all time.
Can I just say Michael and Kobe for me are on the same level.
Okay.
LeBron is great for the era and everything he's done in regards to his global brand and how much he's loved and how great he is now. But I think if all of them were in the same era, playing at the same time, Kobe and Michael will always be top tier for me, not LeBron.
Of course, of course. The reason why I even put LeBron there, because I know that if Kobe and or MJ were to score 50 points, LeBron will actually make it a lot easier for them to score that 50 points without. So, yeah. We can go back. We can have this conversation. So, yeah. So my final question is, who would you like to see or invite or recommend onto this podcast?
Somebody.
And it doesn't have to be basketball, it's any sports.
I think it would be really good to get a Masai Ujiri.
Do you know what? He's one of my favorites. When he spoke about Dikembe Mutombo, what he did there, like he reminded me of, it made me realize who Dikembe Mutombo was and is still. And he reminded me of my mentor, who's also my pastor as well, and how he's really shaping the world and shaping the minds of young people. And all of us are kind of like following in that footsteps to really kind of like help the world basically. And seeing Masai speak that way, I was like, wow, there's people like this in the world. It was quite inspirational. So he's more than what we just see or know his role or what he does basically. So yeah, I think it'll be amazing to speak to.
I'll say two. I'll say Masai Ujiri and I'll say Amadou Galofao, because without those two men, basketball as we know it, especially from the African background, we wouldn't know. Obviously, Amadou Galofao is the godfather of basketball in Africa. Messiah and Amadou together are the most powerful force when it comes to basketball and how it's integrated across the continent. And if you can speak to those two and pick their brains or kind of the vision they had for Africa and they continue to have for Africa, it's really inspirational. And I'm fortunate that I know both of them very well, and I have the opportunity to always talk to them and pick their brains and be inspired by them when it comes to our sports. And I think for anyone, especially in the basketball space, if you want to do something special, always speak to those two, because they will make you understand why your contribution matters, and you shouldn't always give up. Should never give up.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. And I look forward to, obviously, I'm hoping that this conversation doesn't end here. We can build a relationship based on this as well. Because I do think that what we're trying to do aligns strongly also. And yeah, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. And it's also been a pleasure for you to take your time out. And I know we've gone a bit over, so please forgive me. But thank you everyone for watching today. Thank you everyone for watching today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to our channel. And if you're listening to us for the first time, we also want to hear from you guys. Give us feedback. Let us know what we can do better, what you guys would like, people that you'd also like to see as well. Or just DM us on Instagram just to say hi, and let us know that you enjoy our podcast. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Benny, thank you so much as well for taking your time out to come and speak to us. And we hope to speak to you sometime in the future again soon. But yeah, that's all from me. Coach David out. Peace.